I'm Eric Parker. This morning on CT21, a murderous rampage at a Colorado grocery store left 10 dead. The killer using a semi-automatic weapon. In the aftermath, there are calls for stricter gun laws. But can they realistically be enacted even with a Democrat in the White House and a Democratic majority in the House and Senate? We're talking about that. Plus, Waterbury's police chief appears before the Senate Judiciary Committee, testifying that stricter gun laws in Connecticut are working. But tougher gun laws on the federal level would have a big impact here. The chief will join us. And what's happened since recreational marijuana was legalized in Massachusetts? Chief political reporter Susan Raff traveled across state lines to find out. She'll join us. It's all ahead this Sunday, March 28th. CT21 starts right now.
From Channel 3, this is Connecticut's most watched current affairs program, CT21, with Eric Parker. Sponsored by Hartford Healthcare.
Good morning. How do we stop this from happening? That's the question so many are asking following the mass murders of 10 people at a Boulder, Colorado grocery store last week. And it's the question that was asked after 8 people were killed in Atlanta the week before. It's a question that gets asked a lot. Gun control advocates have ideas on what to do, but those opposed cite their Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. So is reaching a middle ground even possible? This morning, we are joined by Dr. Ayres, Yale professor and author of the new book, Weapon of Choice, Fighting Gun Violence While Respecting Gun Rights. Professor Ayres, we appreciate you being with us this morning, and I want to start with the title of your book. Can you do something while still respecting gun rights? What's your take on that?
Sure. There are a number of policies. They're not the only ones we should have, but a number of new policies that actually expand freedom, that are kind of a middle path and can reduce gun violence.
So give me an idea what kind of things we're talking about. Of course, as soon as we talk about, if you say those magic words, gun control, you're immediately going to get one reaction on one side of the debate and one reaction on the other. So what are some steps we could take that maybe won't be just automatically objected to by one side or the other?
We should focus on gun suicide. We lose over 50 Americans every day to gun suicide. It's about 2 out of every 3 gun deaths are suicide. And a simple way forward is to give individuals the right to give up their ability to bear arms. Every state could have a registry where people could go on and register if they want to give up the right to bear arms.
One of the things we talked a lot about in Boulder was the fact that they had a citywide ban that was turned down very recently because of a preemption statute, that the state was the one who had to regulate these issues. We're going to be talking about this more in our next segment, but I want to ask you as the expert on this, does one bar make sense to you? Should it be a broader policy? How do you view the kind of balancing act of state versus city versus national policy? Sure.
Well, there's been a lot of gridlock at the federal level, and that might move now. There's 94% of Americans support a universal background check. It's possible that even with the filibuster that we might get that through at the federal level. But individual states have been imposing a universal background check. We could save lives with that. For the last couple of decades, there has been improvements in many states. It's been uneven, and some states have loosened their gun control laws, but other states have passed sensible gun control. And that is the place where we're likely to have the most success, including in Connecticut.
So if the percentages are as high as you say, and I've seen studies with similar numbers, 94% say on background checks for support, why is nothing happening? Is it just a very vocal minority? Does the 94% have it wrong? Why is there no change if those percentages are that high?
Sure. In part because the gun lobby is very powerful. They can mobilize money and people. And frankly, right now, especially, there's a chance that if Republicans defected and supported what the vast majority of Americans want, that those elected Republicans would be primaried. And that's a real they can't win the general if they can't win the primary.
So what do you think the best path forward is? Is it to try to find something that will appease everybody, that will avoid having primary challenges to Republicans who vote for it? Or is it better to maybe what some Democrats want? We've got some majorities on the Democrat side. That's what they say. So shove everything through. Is that a workable strategy?
I think we should try both. At the state level, there are places that we can find common ground on gun suicide. we can find common ground by taking other rights seriously. For example, conservatives and liberals both agree that the Constitution has a cherished provision that there's a right to peaceful assembly. If Black Lives Matter protesters want to have a demonstration, they should be able to apply in any state for a permit to have it be a gun-free meeting. And we saw this last summer that there were many Black Lives Matter demonstrations that were disrupted by counter-protesters with AK-47s. That shouldn't happen if you believe in the Constitution.
So that's the kind of thing that you're talking about. I know you were talking about it in the suicide aspect, but that you should be able to maybe even for an assembly, a rally, to be able to say, for this particular event, we waive our Second Amendment rights and we want to have a gun-free meeting. That's something that might make it workable, in your opinion?
That's right. I mean, if the NRA wants to have a rally with open carry, they can do that. But if other people want to have a gun-free rally, that should be part of what the states provide them. And I've found that it's possible to get a lot of people of different persuasions, including police, would love to stop having counter protesters bringing guns.
So, of course, we hear over and over after we cover these mass shootings. We heard it here in Connecticut with Sandy Hook. We've heard it down in Florida. We've heard it in Colorado. We've heard it in so many of these other places where there were mass shootings. This time it's different. This time action's going to be taken. And whether you think that action's good or bad, we haven't seen widespread action. Do you think we'll come to a point where widespread action actually occurs?
I think it's a possibility. And we did see important action in Florida after Parkland. A conservative Republican governor and legislature came forward and passed a red flag statute and a number of other sensible gun control measures. It's not going to happen immediately. It's going to still take a lot of continued organizing, but it can happen at the state and maybe at the federal level.
I've only got about 30 seconds left, Professor. I want to ask you this. Connecticut did take action after Sandy Hook, just like you mentioned Florida doing after Parkland. In reviewing what happened here, do you think they're on the right track?
I do. That the Connecticut red flag statute has been successful in reducing gun suicide. And there are more things that can happen. Connecticut is an open carry state, and we do have this problem of disruptive counter protesters. So there are some practical things we could still do to reduce gun violence.
All right. Ian Ayres, the professor and deputy dean at Yale Law School, also the author of Weapon of Choice, Fighting Gun Violence While Respecting Gun Rights. Hopefully some people will go out and get your book and take a look at your proposals. We appreciate you being with us on this Sunday morning. Up next, Waterbury Police Chief Fernando Spagnolo. He was in the national spotlight this week testifying on the topic of gun control and what changes in federal laws would do for the safety of citizens of Connecticut. And coming up later in this program, Massachusetts legalized recreational marijuana years ago. So how's it going there? Chief political reporter Susan Raff reports on lessons learned as Connecticut considers doing the same.